On the weekend before Thanksgiving 1963, tens of millions of Americans sat glued to their television sets as the funeral of President Kennedy unfolded before them. The sudden loss of the young president, a decorated war veteran, brought waves of shock and grief to the American people. But in the days that followed, a solemn pageant of military grandeur helped heal the shattered nation. For the troops who made it happen, it was a prolonged battle of will and endurance.
It was 4 days of the most intense pressure I've ever worked under.
Tom Reed, an Army captain with the Old Guard at the time, was ordered to organize the gravesite ceremonies for the funeral. Today, he lives in retirement, struggling with the effects of Parkinson's disease.
So everybody who was involved knew what to do.
Tom has proud memories of the role he and his fellow guardsmen played in history.
It was a watershed event in my life. I wanted to memorialize it in some fashion.
Tom Reed's book, Their Finest Hour, is the result of that ambition. It contains the personal accounts of 22 old guardsmen who took part in the state funeral. One of them is former PFC Arthur Andy Carlson, now retired and living in Alabama.
Tom explained what he was doing and just wanted me to, if I would, talk with him a little bit, and then he said, "Can you write this down?"
Carlson's assignment during the funeral was to handle the riderless horse Blackjack, symbol of a fallen leader.
Blackjack was a very aloof horse. He didn't like people or horses. He'd been a wild young horse in his youth. And he got spooked right before we moved to the White House, the first day of the state funeral. And he just showed out and acted up, and he acted up the rest of the time.
He was fighting a losing battle with a 1,000-pound horse. And he had very specific places he had to take that horse. That horse had to go. And he didn't have any interest in going where Andy was going. He was the youngest man with a position of responsibility in the funeral, and he performed his duties masterfully, better than anybody I can imagine. He did it with grace. He made it look easy.
I didn't know what was going on around me. You have a job, and when times get tough, you just focus on your job. But now, after hearing these other stories about it all, I have tremendous respect for all those guys and what they did. I had the simplest job out there. All I had to do was lead a horse.
All of the nation's military service units and service academies were represented at the funeral. In the Death Watch at the White House, under the Capitol Dome, along the parade route, and on the casket platoon. But the Old Guard had special oversight responsibilities every step of the way.
The funeral was 4 days long, and it was in so many different locations that no one person saw it all.
But since Tom came out with his book, I've developed a great appreciation for everything that was swirling around while I was doing my small bit. Like the casket bearers, what they did was just awesome. The riders, what they did. The officers trying to coordinate everything, making snap decisions left and right, and making it all flow seamlessly.
50 years later, dozens of Old Guard veterans returned to Washington, D.C. for a reunion.
Sure, mind if I give you a hand?
Led by Tom Reed, they laid a wreath at the gravesite of their former commander-in-chief, where an eternal flame ensures that he will never be forgotten, nor will the troops he commanded who brought him here to rest.